Now the balloon, those marvellous men that went up in these hot air and gas balloons. These were marvellous, marvellous things, and they showed great adventure and ambition. So these people filling up the balloons. So what I've got to get this shape, what I'm going to use is a mould. Let's get out of there. To emulate that shape, I'm going to use a water-filled balloon. This one's not quite right. I'm going to hang it upside down. Can you see how that starts to get that same sort of shape? So what will happen is, I'll do that, stretch it into the shape, and then I'll put tissues over the top and use PVA white glue. So what I'll do is I'll lay tissues over there and put glue over the top. Here's one we prepared earlier, so here's my mould. Now, here's the balloon, here's the shape that I got off it. Now look at this. What I've done is, you can see the red balloon inside. Let's have a look at that edge. What I've got is a shape. It's very floppy, but that was formed over the balloon. I'm amazed that you can see through that. And what I've done is, I've started to fill up the core of it with tissues, crush them down, and I'm filling out the space. And that's going to form the balloon itself. You can see it's a bit lumpy here, but I'll even that out just by pushing it and gently shaping it. So that will get a bit better. You can see that shape starting to form. What else we need is the basket. The basket was formed by scoring and folding acetate. See that shine there? Putting wire around the edge and rendering it over with silicone kit. See how it's got that sort of wicker sort of look? So once that's painted, that should be dead cool. Let me show you those materials. Once again, so what I've got is I've got this acetate, and that's been bent into shape, into a basket shape. And the wire's been put on the edges, so like this. And then I've glued the wire over the top of it to create the corners and the tops and bottoms, so the wire's been put on the top and on the bottom to create the basket shape. Then I've squeezed kit over the top of it. Now you can see already how that's starting to form itself. Can you see that? So that's going to be like that. This will be a plumper shape, and that'll be our balloons rising, and it'll have the ring around there. It's going to be really cool. And there's the backdrop. 2 pieces of foam core board put together and rendered into a smooth curve, which I'll have to fill, because if you get up close you can see there's all sorts of gaps in it. But that's the start of the backdrop. So what happens is, hard to see here, that goes down. That will be the city of Melbourne, would you believe? You're looking at the Yarra River here, which will snake along there, and I'll render up some of that. And the balloon comes sailing in here. Drifting off towards Heidelberg with the gondola or the basket underneath. Okay, so that's what I'll be doing now. I'll be filling that stuff in. a bit like toothpaste. Only without the mint flavour. But it has that sort of squishy thickness. Now here's the armature for my figure. There's a small drawing here. What I'm trying to do is twist wire to make a frame. He's going to be the guy who's standing in the balloon. What I need to do is just it's kind of hard because the wire's either too small, too soft or too hard. I've got a drawing here that I use as a basis. This goes up through the shoulder. Okay. So I start twisting it using pliers and my drawing just to measure things off. Looks like a really strange way to make a figure, but it works really well. Okay, so I'll start twisting this stuff back to the base of the hand. So that's the armature of the balloonist. I'll cut the stand off later, but the balloonist goes into the balloon, so well, that's the basis of it. Okay, so now what happens is that what I'll try and do now is I'll put filler over the top of the little guy. Basically I'm just cladding it now. I'm not really shaping because I'll sculpt it later. What happens, probably way away from where it should be. Got the body filler, pushing it in the armature, making sure it fills up. I'll do this in a couple of stages in case it hardens on the outside and stays wet on the inside. So what I'm doing is just trying to make a lump that I can carve or sculpt or whatever. I'm just cladding that wire figure or the armature in some kind of covering. The good thing is, as you work it, that starts to dry. It's no good at first because it sticks to the tool, doesn't stick to the wire. Hopeless with this great head. Looks like a weird Easter bunny. Uh-oh. Okay, we've had the problem. After a lot of carving, our demented rabbit has now become much too big. I've almost finished carving him too. It doesn't look like it, but he's got his principal shape. He's much too big. Not only that, the basket that I've got, which I love, really looks like a balloon basket, is also too big. So I'm going to have to remake both these things. But there's a couple of things. It's not too bad really, because the balloon that I've built worked out fine. I've got some reference for the background. So basically it's just a question of redoing this, probably about 2/3 the size. The scale was all wrong. The balloon envelope, which is meant to be 20 metres tall, I've scaled it up from the figure's size, and it only turns out to be about less than 10 metres, which is wrong for the size. So we'll just adapt. I'll show you how that balloon's going. I love these bits. Basically what happened was the balloon, see from the side, it's the front. I've started filling it in. Now the best thing I can do is just show you by actually putting it down on the table and showing you the bits. What I've done is, it was moulded around the balloon, remember? So you can see the shell. I've strutted it up at the back and I've filled it with tissues. The balloon shape's terrific. Now, you can probably just see from the edge, see how there's just some slight dints in it? That'll be fine. What I'll do is now I'll undercoat it, do the final filling on it. But clearly, if I put it down on the ground, if I put it down on the table, what you can see is the basket is out of scale. It's just too big. Because if I look at a reference over here, see how the figures in the basket are just a totally different sort of thing. I'm not worried about the envelope shape here. That's not the most important thing because they had different sizes and shapes. But I am worried about the size of that. So that's going to come right down now. That's what I'll be doing. I'll be building a new one. So I'll set this up and get it ready to go. So you can see I've started to shape the new basket. Now I've got another piece of wire here, and what I'll do is I'll just continue building up the rails to the basket. So what happens is the basket gets put down, and I'll put the rails on. That becomes that wicker edge. So I'll stick that on with a hot glue gun, measure the pieces. It's a bit weird because I haven't found a way to mark the wire properly. So I'm just sort of guessing. It seems to be working out fine though. So yeah, nothing goes over roses. So I've got the basket, I've got the little wire edges, which replicates that sort of cane look. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to squeeze out some silicone kit over it and render it just like I did the other basket. So you get the squishy, gunky stuff, and you just sort of, it's really ugly. Look at this, talk about ugly. Now what you do is, great rendering material, I love it. Now all you do is you just smear it over it. It's ugly, isn't it? It's not pretty. The ugly rendering trick. And what happens is it coats the wire, gives me a surface to render with. A bit more. Okay, so once I've done the rendering, what I do is I put the cane effect in, which is actually so now what we'll do here is we'll mix up a nice dark batch of brown, and what we'll do is we'll do the wicker on the basket. I'm not trying to paint the whole thing, all I'm trying to do is get a good dark colour washed into the background. So look, what I'll try and do is the basket shape. The darkest brown I can mix with water, I'll brush right into there. I'm hoping that goes down into all the grooves. All the grooves, nice and dark. Need some more water. Very watery mix I'm looking for here. Well, this little basket looks so much like a basket. Now for the balloon, I'm going to mix a bit of ochre, lots of white, a little bit of varnish. And what I'm going to start doing is building up different layers of colour over the top of the balloon. So I've got some varnish, white and colour, and what I'll do is probably 3 or 4 layers now. So look, see how I sort of squish it in there? Just pull out a bit, might just get in a bit there. Let's just have a look at it. Let's just see that surface there. Cool. Couple of different layers. So this is the first one. First layer. They say it was a rubberized muslin or cloth, silk often they used because it was so light and strong. But very expensive. Imagine what it would be to Fill a 20-metre dome with silk. It's serious stuff. Okay, so we'll just brush that paint right in. I'm not trying to get rid of the texture, I'm trying to keep some of the texture there, because I want that feeling of that rubberized silk. The best thing with the balloon factories in Paris that just made countless of these balloons, well not countless, but many of these balloons to escape the Prussian siege. So nice brush right into the corners. Wide shot. Oh. We're about to start painting our background for our balloon scene. Some of the things that I've got here. I've got a palette. I've got the most absurd collection of brushes. Have a look at this. I've got very small brushes, medium brushes, tall tubular brushes and flat brushes. A big range of things, so that's pretty flat. Look at these ones. I guess I'll be using these for the backdrops. All the brushes have just been rinsed and they've had a good coat of conditioner, but then the brushes go right down to the smallest of sizes. I've got a double O brush here, we've almost got nothing left on them, and I'll be using these even for the clouds. I'll be using them for highlights, but hopefully I'll be rendering clouds with flat brushes. Hard to see, isn't it? It's not working. Won't do it. Strange. Won't do it. Anyway, okay, so the brushes, variety of brushes. Palette. Lots of clean water. Make sure your water's clean. Jar looks dirty, but the water's clean. And I've got a variety of paints. Let me show you. I've got a clean rag to wash out the brushes, keep the excess moisture off it. And I've got my selection of paints. 2 blues, a red, a brown and a white. This is what I use for the skies. There seems to be a lot of purple tinge in the skies in Melbourne, so I'll be using just a small variety of things, maybe a bit of ochre. Okay, so we'll go from there. I'll just set up. Here's the backdrop. Seems better. Anyway. Okay, there's the backdrop I'll be painting. And I've got tissues over here. So it's pretty well everything I need. What I'll do now is I'll mix up the paint. And I've got my reference up the back here. I've got a cloudscape that I think that comes from an area near Melbourne. And I have some painting tips over here. The second book deals simply with paint. It's like a painting reference. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll start by I'll use a less interesting brush, and I'll use that just to scoop my paint out. So white's going to be the trick. Whatever it is, white and water, because there's a lot of fluid in the sky. But I don't need that much, which is good. Bit of yellow in there. So I'll put my blues at the top of the palette, right up the top there, so I can run the colour down into the paint. At the top of the palette. So I'll try a variety of blues. This is my old Talons paint. I've had it probably more than 10 years, but it just keeps on keeping on. But it's very hard to use, it's very plasticky. But it's got a good colour, cerulean blue. Probably need a bit of grey, so I might have to either mix some purple out of that. So I'll be putting red up there, so I can just change the accent of the colour a bit. Because if I want a grey, I'll use a browny grey. Right. Now, I found another way to use water lately. I'm just using sort of like mineral water, because I can pour it, I can sort of dose it a bit better. I'm going for a really watercolory effect. I want to get a couple of layers of blue. Don't want it to be... It's quite filmy light. No, it's not the right one. Cerulean's the blue, I think. Don't like the mix. Might have to toss it and start again. Close your paint because the lids gum up. This could be the only painter who had had a tube of paint for 10 years. What does that say about me? It's a bit weird, isn't it? 10-year-old paint. Okay, I'll start mixing that up, and what I'm going to do is I'll show you as it's being applied. I'll darken the paint up towards the top. Paint starts light and gets darker as you move up towards the top. So it's got a grey sort of look to it already because I've mixed the two blues together. A fairly broad brush. So what I'll do is I'll just have a test on a piece. I need something to test on. Test sheet. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. What I'll be doing is I'll be trying to mix in a much darker tint up the top. Yeah, that'll be fine. Like a bit more of a grey tinge, I guess. Doesn't matter, I'll put some clouds over the top. Let's start with a blue base. Nice brush. So I'll start solid up the top. Let's have a look at it. I've been wanting to do this for 2 days. I just need to get a coat down. It doesn't matter too much, because I'm going to try and do this in layers because I'm looking for a cloudy effect. I'm not looking for a smooth effect. Might have to go to a different brush. I'll keep on with this for a moment. This is strange because as I'm painting the radio's not on. Normally the radio is always on here. Part of what I do. Think about things, the radio's always on. Sort of like your companion, your working companion in a way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to mess with this. Normally what I'd be doing is I'd be brushing the clouds straight into here to get a wet on wet effect. I'm not going to do it today. I want to have a I want a filmy sky this time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do it in a couple of shots. I want to overlay it in different. And I've also noticed that I've got my mix is much too dry, so it doesn't matter. Just make a start. I'll be happy once I've got a layer of paint down. Speeds me up from there too. I usually find I'm a bit hesitant. Okay, that'll do. Oh, lovely. That's a disaster. That's not a disaster, it's fine actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dye all the strands for the balloon to rig the balloon up. So what I need is some varnish, a little bit of colour. I don't know, maybe the red's better. I don't know, let's try a bit of this. No, I want the red brown. So what I'll do is, I'll dye the varnish with a bit of this red, brown. That's for the ropes to the balloon. The reason I'm varnishing it is I don't want a thready sort of appearance. I really want it to be, what do you call it? I really want the cord to be smooth for the scale. You can't have those hairy bits, it doesn't look right. Yeah, it's too light. The paint I'm using here is a disaster. It's so watery, it just sort of blobs out, and it's also not permanent. It doesn't dry permanent. It's water soluble, which is a pain. Okay, let's try it again. Mix up another batch. Too dark, see? Oh, let's have a look at it anyway. Might be better. I've got a rubber glove on so that I can pull the thread through. So the balloon's starting to get rigged up, ready to go. I've just dyed some more of the lines so they're getting ready to go on, but you can kind of see that. Put full on wide. Let's see if I go completely wide. So you can see that with the shrouds hanging down, join those shrouds together. It gives that sort of balloon look. Good stuff. Okay. There we go, let's have a look at it from the correct angle. So I've got to get down, right down into the scene. Let me come down to, looks a bit better, doesn't it? So I'm looking for that sort of shot. Let's go wide. Looks kind of great. I don't think I'll be able to do that, but still, that's pretty good. So you can see the balloon starting to get rigged. The shroud's coming off it. You can see how it's starting to cross over. It's just starting to get there, isn't it, really? It's going to take a lot because I'm going to have to continue the rigging all the way around the back. But it's starting to look the part. I think it'll be fine. Let's widen the shot out a bit. It's actually perhaps a bit more instructive if you see the back of it. So it's half a balloon, even though it looks like a whole. You can kind of see that. See him sort of drifting around like that. Okay, now what I'll be doing now is I'll be painting the figure. Got lots to talk about because I've started painting in that backdrop. Now look, if you zoom into it, it doesn't look much. But as you zoom into it, you start to get that earthy sort of feel. And if we zoom right in, let's change it so we get a good look at it. They're very basic techniques I've used. See how the brushes scrub that stuff out? Really very stark. But not a bad effect. I think it probably needs to be just a bit darker. Water holes, bit of river. I'll have another look at that in a minute. Now the other things I need to show you. So that's the backdrop. The rigging on the balloon continues. And what I'm doing is I'm sticking the various pieces of rope together. And when you get round to the back of the balloon, oh, battery's going. You can actually see around the back of the balloon where all those pieces of cord come round. Now this is important because in the final balloon sequence it's going to look something like that. So lots of detail there. Here's the original size. I want to show you a contrast. Here's the original size figure against the balloon. It's much too small, the balloon. But with the newer figure, yeah, you can't see him quite right yet, but he's starting to get there. He looks good in the balloon. The balloon car, a gondola or basket, is built and painted, and look, I'm starting to rig it up with the lines now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rig up the cord ring underneath the balloon. I'm using this as reference, and first thing I'll do is I'll use a piece of acetate. So let's go back down to where I should be here. Let's go down to the work area. Oops, product placement. Forget the product placement. So I'll be working with this, with the balloon here. Now, a couple of stages. What I've done is I've cut some acetate, which is clear packing material, into thin, long strips. This is only a short one, but I've cut it into strips. Next thing I've done is I've wound it round the handle of this paintbrush, and then I've stuck it together with super glue at this point. So I've got a perfectly round ring if I take that off. If I take that off, what I end up with is this. So it's a round ring of the correct size. I've used the dividers just to work out how it is. Now what I'm trying to do is try and rig it up. I want to get the first cord over. So what I'm going to do is thread it through. You might notice the white cord here. Looks like the end's been painted white. It's not the case. I wonder if you can guess what's happened here. I've actually dyed white cotton because I wanted the colour. I wanted a particular colour. Now what I want to do is I want to pass it like this. I'm going to knot it around the back. And I'm going to do it like they tie the balloons. And I'm going to tie it down with super glue. But I'm going to pass the knot the same way that they do, for no other reason than that it would be fun to do so. Okay, first thing I need to do is just determine the depth of this object. I want the ring about here. Okay. It's a bit tricky. One of my best tools, this is really amazing, is an etching needle, because it's such toughened steel. It's got this sort of like really shiny surface and the super glue doesn't stick to it, but it's great for transferring super glue. So all I need to do is pass the cord under and just first stick it to the super glue under tension, because I want to get the height right. You probably can't see what I'm doing, can you? Okay, first cord in. Pass this around the back. And then knot it just like it would be on the real balloon. Oh, there's not enough glue there. Now I'll use this, what's left of the cord I will use. I've got to keep some tension on it. This is going to be difficult to get it all right. So I've got the first one. I'm going to have to do them one at a time. Looks good. I'll paint the ring later because I need it to be unpainted so that things will stick to it. I've got to guess how wide these things are going to be. I could measure them all. Do it mathematically, really. Probably better. It's going to be tricky. Now I've rigged up the balloon, and what you see I've done is, on a piece of cardboard, I've put up a jig, this piece of plastic here. And that is putting tension on the balloon ring by using these white lines here. I've put tension on the balloon ring like that, pulling it down and securing it fast to the white piece. And that's allowed me to string up the rest of the cords. See? They've been glued at the top bit. You can see the glue mark there. And they're strung down there. So what I'm going to do now is cut it loose. I'll use my scissors. I'll cut it off the jig. I glued this stuff down with hot wax. So that's hot. And now the balloon ring's loose, which is kind of strange because it's stiff enough. Actually, it'll be good. So what I need to do now is get this off. Okay, so the jig's away now. Now what I need to do now is I'll trim off all those cords at the base, but I've got to find a way to get these things taut. Oh gee, it doesn't work. I'll have to do it on all 4 points, otherwise it doesn't work. It's amazing. See how it's going slack in some places? I'm going to have to load down the basket with weight. Oh sorry, it's swimming around like mad. Let's get this stuff off there. Gee, it's really hard to find out where it goes exactly. I have to get it in exactly the right place, otherwise the cords don't go taut. It's going to be difficult. Anyway, good start. So the idea now is get the balloon under there. What a tangle of cords. So what I do now is put the balloon basket in there. Sort out these cords. So I'm going to have to stick a whole lot of weight in there. I don't know. Anyway, we'll figure it out. I'll do that by putting it upright and then weighing it down. Now whether this works or not, you'll probably get an idea of how complex this stage of it is. Because there's no weight in what I'm doing, normally with the balloon goes up, the weight pulls it down. The weight of the gondola and the people. Even the rigging, I guess, to a certain extent. But in here there's no weight, not compared to the whole structure, and it's there's no gravity working on it. With the balloon pulling up and the weight pulling down. So what I have to do is create the impression of gravity by stretching these cords. And it is very difficult. Because as you can see, I've got to do a number of different things. I've got to try and get the hot wax in there. It's been a lot of trouble with glue. I've used 3 different glues. I don't think this is going to work, but I've got to try it anyway because I've tried the other 2 glues and I can't get to the back. Super glue sticks too fast. When I put the super glue on, it sticks in one shot. There's no compliance. Same as this one, really. Oh, it's very difficult. This is very difficult, this part. And it's slowing me down, which is stressing me out. I don't mean it to, but there you go. It does. And I have to keep making tools to make things work. I need a hook. Or I've got a hook. I shouldn't be too stressed about this. Correct tension is really important. I'm not sure I'm going to get it right. I'm just going to have to go with it at a given moment because I can't spend the rest of the year doing this. Well, that might address it. It'd be nice if I could get it out here. If that's not in part of the equation, maybe it can be. Maybe I've got to pull it out here. So I need the tension. Check this out, we've got the guy falling out of the balloon. This is what had happened if the stays would break. Look, I've got to tell you, this is driving me crazy because there's just so many bits of cord and stuff here. What a story. What a story. It makes the actual balloon flight seem simple. It really does. I've got to tell you. Doesn't matter what I do, I seem to find it's getting more and more complicated in this job. I can't seem to find simple ways to do things. There you go, look, I'm hanging from two parts. Well, there you go, after all that trials and tribulation, I've actually been able to glue all that up, but it took forever, let me tell you. If I pan out now, you can see what state we're in now. So get the idea. Look who's laying on the ground. Looks like he's falling out of the balloon. But here's our brave pilot. And he'll be going back in there right now. So in he goes. And what we'll do is, what I've got is I've got a piece of fishing line under here. See how all the lines are slack? Let's just zoom in and I'll show you what I mean. See how all the lines have gone slack? You know, that doesn't look like weight. So what I need to do now is underneath, I'm going to pull this down so that I just stretch all those lines to give a feeling of weight, because I tried fishing weights in there, it didn't work. So I'll be pulling it down. See the slack lines? The lighting's great though now. Look at that with that lovely shadow on it, deep shadow on the balloon. If I pan out, you can see the drop shadow behind it, but isn't it a nice scene? That smoke in the background, it's like somebody burning off. They were always burning stuff off, clearing timber, getting rid of stuff. Doesn't it work well as a scene though? You can actually get around it, which is kind of nice. So yeah, and also we can just dip under it. We can catch him as the balloon's going up. Look at that, isn't that lovely? Okay, good stuff. So what I'll do is, look, I'll push a hole into the backdrop, into the base, right near the smoke path here. Oh, put a deep hole through there. That's where I'm going to thread my cord, and then we'll put some tension on it. So I've pulled the cord through the base here. It goes down from the balloon into the base, and what I need to do now is just put a bit of tension on it. It's going to be hard, okay? So I'll glue it. So what I'll do is I'll pull it down and then I'll glue it. Okay, we'll see how that goes. Not too much tension. There you go. I've secured the cord. It's got a small beam on the bottom. You might just see that. Yeah, see the cord lighting up there? It's right, really under tension now. Let's have a look in there. Let's go right in and have a look at it. But doesn't that give a much better attitude to the balloon? Look at that. It's just got to be that sort of weight. Yeah, there it goes. Oh,